I think we should start now. It's
Hello.
3 minutes past 3. And
Hi.
not to give an excuse to our friend from abroad, Dr. Stephen, that Indians start programs late. So we should start immediately, and over to my friend from ABP Education, Prof. Jyot. Yes, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to ABP Education. My name is Prabjeet Singh. And before talking about the 6th webinar in the Campus to Career series, I would like to introduce to you abpeducation.com, like a small word on it. We are a website that deals in everything that happens in the higher education world, and regarding exams, syllabus updates, and educators, career tips, advice. Everything is published there, and it's a one-stop destination for higher education matters. We are powered by the Telegraph Online and Anand Bazar Patrika. And now coming to the Campus to Career series, it started on August 12th, and with the Bengal Education Leaders Summit, which was on which Mr. Partho Chatterjee, State Education Minister of Bengal, was also present. And today's webinar is about web is where it's all happening, information to entertainment. Now, without any delay, would like to introduce our elite panelists. Mr. Roshan Abbas, founder, Geometry and Compass, President, EEMA, one of India's finest orators and storytellers. Mr. Abbas is an actor, TV and radio host, producer, event manager, creative director, lyricist, angel investor, author, and public speaking coach. Welcome, Mr. Abbas. Next on the panel is Dr. Jaseena Backer, author and TV personality. Dr. Backer is a writer and psychologist. She has authored a short story collection, Tales That Entail. She has been working with women and their issues for the past 13 years. Welcome. Next on the panel, Dr. Stephen Quinn, Professor of Mobile Journalism at Christiania University, Norway. Dr. Stephen Quinn has worked as a journalist and has been a journalism teacher for almost 5 decades in 9 countries. He makes videos and teaches people how to do the same with only a smartphone. He also writes screenplays for feature movies and short films. Welcome, Dr. Quinn.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Next on the panel is Sonia Kulkarni, Managing Partner, Hung Golden and Media, a strategic PR and brand solutions agency. She has been a PR evangelist for over 25 years, and she has been founder of She Dares and the Sari Library. She is also a Pinkathon ambassador working towards empowering women through fitness. She is also a TEDx speaker. We welcome you, ma'am. Next on the panel, Mr. Ashish SK, Chairman, Animation Cell, FICCI. He is a founder of Punyayug Art Vision Private Limited. He was heading Reliance Animation and Reliance AIMS as CEO. He is known to be the most dedicated and colorful personality in the animation industry. He was recently awarded the Creative Entrepreneur of the Year for 2015 by the Entrepreneur magazine. Welcome, Mr. Ashish. Next on the panel, Dr. Priyanka Matanhelia, academician and consumer research consultant. Dr. Priyanka Matanhelia has a PhD in journalism and public communication from University of Maryland. After that, she taught communication courses in digital media at St. Johns Hopkins University. Welcome, ma'am. And our moderator, Professor Ujjwal K. Chowdhury, Pro Vice Chancellor, Adamas University. Professor Ujjwal K. Chowdhury is a leading media and communication academic, having earlier been the Dean of Media, Symbiosis Pune, MIT Mumbai, Whistling Woods International, and Pearl Academy of Delhi and Mumbai. He is a known face in TV studio debates and a regular writer in Indian media. And now I would like to hand over the session to Dr. Chowdhury.
Thank you, Pravjit. And this is my seventh or eighth, I think, eighth webinar that I'm associated with in ABP Education. And I really appreciate ABP for creating a new concept by itself, a very important and interesting concept that ABP has created today. And this is a baby of the lockdown. Please understand, abpeducation.com did not exist on 24th March when Prime Minister announced lockdown. This is a baby produced in April in the new financial year and a product of the COVID times. And I really salute the portal that now each of their webinar videos are getting 150,000 to 200,000, or in Indian language 2 lakhs views. At this point of time, I find 163 people logged on the Zoom platform, and there are many more on the Facebook as well as we go ahead. As you know, today's focus is on web. Web is here to stay. Web is no more the future, it's here in the current moment. Yes, lockdown induced web culture has changed a lot, but I will not get into that much. I will work more as a timekeeper, and more particularly, I'm conscious about the starting of this because Dr. Stephen Quinn has to join another program, which is of University of Norway in a few moments from now. Dr. Stephen Quinn has been a friend for a long time, and he has led the media courses in various universities like Griffith University and many others. And currently, he is associated with a university in Norway, but based out of London. Dr. Stephen Quinn is very well known in the field of mobile journalism. So I now request Dr. Stephen Quinn to first make the opening comments on how journalism is going to change in the times that we are seeing now, how mobile and the web would be the dominant face or platform of journalism going ahead. It is a convergence world, I understand. Print, television, radio, outdoor, and mobile. And obviously mobile means digital as well. All would exist, but it will be a digital-led, mobile-led journalism ahead. On that, Dr. Stephen Quinn from London speaks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you for this opportunity, and good afternoon, everybody.
Little louder, sir.
A little louder?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start again then. Thank you for this opportunity and good afternoon, everybody. I begin with an apology in that I have to rush away by 3:25 p.m. India time. I have spent my time during lockdown making 2 films, and I've been really busy with editing the content. And I've promised some weeks ago to give a talk to a writers group about the process of taking a script from a written textual script and making a movie. And that's the reason I have to rush away. This arrangement was made some time ago. To answer Ujjwal's question, I think that there's been a move from traditional media, let's say print newspapers and traditional television, into digital formats. It's been happening slowly for a long time, but I think I suggest to you that this COVID-19 business has really accelerated the process. In my country, for example, here in England, circulations of newspapers, print circulations, have declined up to 40% in the last 3 months. But online readership of those same newspapers has risen by almost as much. So we're seeing a move from the traditional print version to the digital version, and there are lots of reasons for that, which I would happily go into. My main point today is that these digital tools that are available to us and which are relatively inexpensive. I mean, a good mobile phone, a quality smartphone is expensive, but relative to the cost of a broadcast quality camera and all the equipment that comes with it, it's relatively inexpensive. Combine that with two other factors. One is the web as a distribution platform. But the key to all this, the equation that, the part of the equation that people forget is it's about the brain that controls the hands, that controls the mobile phone. That is the key to all this. To suggest that I have a mobile phone and I can make movies and put them on the web and become very rich is naive, unless that person has received training. The hands need to be trained, the brain needs to be trained. It's the equivalent of giving somebody a set of scalpels and telling them suddenly you're a surgeon, or giving somebody some spanners and other tools and telling them they're a car mechanic. Without training, I would not let an untrained surgeon near me, even with the best scalpel. In essence, it's about education. It's about the skills that you learn to be able to make creative products with digital tools. That's the essence of what I'm talking about. Do you have, shall I keep talking, or would you like to?
You can make your initial comments, and if you have time, you can wait for another round, but I don't know whether you'll have time. So make your initial comments. Maybe I'll get a question or two for you.
All right. The major issue related to the web is the fact that there are so many hours of video already on the web. It's impossible to track in some respects. The Google blog gives us numbers, Facebook's website gives us numbers, but it's impossible to track. But we're talking millions and millions and millions of hours of video being put on the web. And to be honest, much of it, who knows, 90%, 95%, a huge proportion of it is rubbish. It's badly filmed, it's badly framed. So how can you, if you want to make movies and distribute via the web, how can you get an audience? Well, I would suggest to you the issue is making a quality product. How do you get a quality product? It's through editing. So if you're a print writer, your copy is improved by a copy editor. If you're a still photographer, your photographs are made better by a photographic editor. And it's the same with video. You need to learn to edit your video. It's about quality and brevity. That's what succeeds on the web. How do you get that quality? Again, it's through training. It's through learning the skills of making your point briefly, succinctly, beautifully, using editing software. And when I talk about Mojo, which is my specialty area, Mojo is a contraction of mobile as in mobile phone, but also mobile as in being able to move around, and journalism, Mojo, mobile journalism. It's about producing quality products using only a mobile phone, which involves the editing on the mobile phone, with adding the narration on the mobile phone, adding all the text on the mobile phone, and distributing via the mobile phone. So you have this amazing tool in your pocket, but you need to be trained how to use it.
Thank you. There are some questions, couple of questions, but before I get into the questions, I would like to quickly remind everyone, all 177 of you who are there here and those who are there on Facebook Live, digital tools are available. They are inexpensive in comparison to television tools, broadcast tools. Web as a distribution factor is easier. Mass factor is there. Man behind the machine is crucial, man or woman, irrespective. Training must. Creative production with digital tools possible, but quality product requires post-production. and that also requires further training. Some key points of Dr. Stephen Quinn, and this is largely with respect to news production on the web, for the web, through mobile or otherwise. Anam Ansari asks, sir, what are we going to get audience, how are we going to get audience on our web when we are newbies in the field of news portals or news production on the web?
That's a very important and vital question. I think it's probably should be the subject of another seminar because it's such a big subject. That's the reality. You can make a really quality video, but unless somebody sees it, so that means marketing, that means being able to distribute via social media and other platforms. It means that the modern creator, the mojo, needs, as well as being able to make a quality edited video, also needs to be able to find ways to distribute and market their product effectively, and that means using social media tools. But there's no point in marketing a product if it's no good.
Right. So social media tools and social media promotion and marketing is one major way. Yes, there are many means and ways, and there are training modules to teach how to market a product on the web. Second question from Jaydeep Das: where and how can I get the training to do Mozo so skillfully? Any online training would you like to suggest?
Well, I can suggest my website. I teach Mojo in Norway. I'm not there at the moment because of lockdown. So I'm teaching via Zoom at the moment, and that means I've needed to enhance my website. I'm happy to give people a link to my website. It's an open site. I have lots and lots of training materials and especially lots of videos. And of course, the World Wide Web is a wonderful source. The issue is finding quality content on the web. There is so much stuff there that it's almost like we need to have a web awareness course or a media education course,
right,
to teach people how to find quality content, because there's so much noise on the web already.
Yeah. Would you like to mention your mention your website you said?
Sure. It's probably easier if somebody puts up a slide, but it's simply SRA Quinn. So my 3 initials plus my surname.org, and the homepage you'll see a link to Christiania, which is the university I work for in Norway. Click on the Christiania link in the bottom right-hand corner. It will take you to all of my notes. And a link to the various
Christiania.edu. What is the website URL?
No, there is no content on the Christiania site. It's only on my site.
Okay. No, would you give the URL? I'm writing it in the chat.
I put it on the group, sir.
Okay, thank you. srquinn.org, right? srquinn.org. Thank you. Thank you, Roshan. You're really fast. srquinn.org. Okay, Stephen, I would like to also add to that some of the, first of all, I thank you, Dr. Stephen, for your support to our educational initiatives in India. When I was Dean of Pearl Academy, and today when I'm Pro Vice Chancellor of Adamas University, Kolkata, you have been supporting even from a distance. At Pearl, you even flew down to India, to Delhi for that, for training our youngsters. And now you are doing it from distance. Thank you very much for that. I would like to mention to the audience that Adamas University has a course which is called BSc and MSc Media Technologies, which actually talks about producing content technologically. Apart from the intellectual part of it, which is in the regular media courses, there is a media technology course, BSc and MSc, which talks about and actually teaches production online. Thank you. And the last question before you leave, Dr. Quinn, there is a question that has come. Do we compromise on quality once we shift to mobile journalism? Earlier, each video was made with a lot of planning and care. Now, the focus is on pace or speed. Do we compromise on quality?
Every time you drive a car faster and faster, you risk having an accident. So yes, speed is a problem. The reason that people need to be trained is that once people are trained and have certain skills, they can work at speed and still produce something that's quality.
Right.
So comes back to training. It's the hands that are connected to the brain that makes the difference. The ability to tell a story. It's not about the tools. Having said that, the camera on mobile phones is getting better and better and better, to the point where feature movies are being recorded. Feature movies are being made in various parts of the world using only a smartphone, particularly an iPhone.
And I would like to note here that NDTV for a long time has been doing mobile journalism based television journalism. I mean, electronic news gathering has been through mobile. Samsung brand, I think they use A10 model, I suppose. So, or Galaxy 10 model, I suppose. And they are doing it quite effectively. Much of the field work that you see are on mobile. That's one. And Barkha has started a channel called Mozo channel, MOJO Mozo channel on YouTube, which is completely mobile shot. Just to give examples, because these are easily available. There's one question with that will close your part, sir. Dr. Gyanaranjan Mishra from Odisha. He's the head of the Department of Media in Birla Global University. Is asking, what are the practical components to be taught to students in mobile journalism? I think you can surely mention that.
I really don't have much time to go into that.
Briefly.
Well, there are the obvious technical skills in framing and quality audio and appropriate lighting. But on top of that, you need a certain level of curiosity, the ability to locate appropriate and sensible and good stories. The ability to tell stories is probably the most fundamental. That's not about technology. That's more about levels of creativity. And one of the great things about the mobile phone, I suggest, is that it liberates people's creativity, because they're not being encumbered by all the heavy equipment that we used to have when I worked in television many, many years ago.
I really like this sentence, liberates people's creativity. I often consider that mobile has democratized, or digital in general has democratized media and entertainment. And to that you add, mobile liberates people's creativity, easy to handle, faster, and preparation time is less, turnaround time is faster. So indeed, it is easy to handle. Yes, I agree. Compromise on quality is not the purpose. Space and quality both have to be balanced in context of mobile journalism. Thank you. This has been a very good beginning. Sir, I understand you have an immediate work after this, so I'll not hold you back. Thank you for your time. And as per the promise, I told that we'll free you in 30 minutes. Sir, it's 26 minutes. You are free now to leave. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I apologize again. I must go. I've got a class starting in 3 minutes.
Yes, and I must once again note for everyone, Mr. Roshan Abbas has already noted in the chat box this portal, sraquinn.org, sraquinn.org, where you can go and get a lot of, if I can say, dope on mobile journalism and web journalism. So Roshan, good to see you. The background of yours is very sexy. Yes. I don't know how you
Thanks,
made
Dr.
that.
Quinn. Thank you so much, Dr. Quinn.
I really must go.
I know, Dr.
Thank
Quinn.
you. Thank you, Dr. Quinn. Your background is very beautiful, virtual, Roshan. Yes. And that's the world to go, that you do events with a virtual backgrounds as well. By the way, Roshan is a great guy. Everyone knows him by name. I mean, the world, Indian media knew him first as a radio RJ. You know, he actually took the nation by storm as an RJ with his voice. I know him as a quiz master also. I don't know whether he finds time for quizzing now, but he has been a quiz master for a very long time. And then he tried his hands in film production, in training in radio, and the biggest success story has been Encompass. Encompass, which is a well-known, globally recognized events and experiential marketing organization, which has been taken over by, I think, JWT Group, right?
It was WPP with aligned with JWT, and now
Right.
we've gone with a new alignment with Geometry, which is another global major under WPP.
Right. So WPP Group basically, finally, and but that's his entrepreneurial journey. He has got other things. He has actually mentored youngsters, including some of my former students, to come out with a fabulous agency called Glitch. Maybe he can talk about that. And today, only a few weeks from now, a few weeks earlier, he has been elected as the national president of Events and Entertainment Management Association of India, India's apex body in events industry. So over to you, Roshan. I'm sure you guys are going hungry, man. There's no event on ground. With the digital, you cannot have events. How are you managing? What's your plan for the industry? Over to you, Roshan.
So thank you, Professor Ujjwal. It's always a pleasure being with you. I think another thing which people don't realize is that his name talks about brightness and my name, Roshan, talks about light. So we end
Wow.
up together very often. The important thing that I wanted to just segue from what Dr. Quinn was saying, which is that I've got some very interesting statistics to give everyone that right now, in a minute, and this is a statistic that has recently come, there are 208,333 people using Zoom every minute,
Wow.
right? This is a statistic from the internet. If you look at MS Teams, it's 52,000 people, roughly 52,083 people who are using MS Teams. Now, why is Zoom more popular over MS Teams at the moment? Because people discovered it first, people went to it, people found its functionality a lot easier and a lot more adaptable. Like the first people where you could put a virtual background was here, not in MS Teams. This was the first place where you could spotlight a person, not there. So when technology is created and humanity comes in touch with technology, it immediately looks for the most frictionless and the most freedom providing, just as what Dr. Quinn was saying about the mobile phone giving you journalistic freedom. But just like that, there is a lot of freedom that you end up with when technology meets creativity. So to answer now your second question, which is what are event managers doing? Event managers started by managing Zoom meetings. And I told people very early that a person who knows how to smartly operate Zoom could be charging 500 rupees an hour. And if they did that for 5 hours a day, that's 2,500 rupees, which means they could be sitting on a 75,000 rupee salary from home. And this is the most basic salary I'm talking of. But when you go one level further, which is what we started doing, because events are about content and events are about then finding a stage to give that content on. The stage keeps changing. So we said, stage badal gaya hai. This is the new stage. The screen is the stage. Our teams went in the first month or two and we set up a unit called Prodigy. So Prodigy became our digital live experience team, which for a month I said, don't do anything, just experiment. They went and experimented on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Zoom, MS Teams, Google Meet. And they then found that there were other technologies you could integrate with this. And the minute you could integrate those technology, just like I have changed my backdrop, there are so many more things I could do. I could actually be bringing in polls. I could be bringing in questions. I could be giving you CTAs by which you could go and buy a product. So the ability to not just create content, but relevant content. And yesterday I read a line that completely blew my mind because it said that URLs need to start reflecting IRL. And everyone will wonder what's an IRL. So it's very simple. It said that a URL, which is the address that you get for a web, should be reflecting what's happening IRL in real life. So your real life, the closer technology comes to a human experience, the more easy it's going to be. And that's what people will use. When events started post-lockdown, nobody wanted to pay you 50,000 rupees. Today, people are paying 25 lakhs if you're doing a good digital event, because we can now create the Adamas lobby. We can create various classrooms which you click on and enter with virtual classmates and their avatars present. You can be present in a holographic image, in a non-holographic image. It's completely up to you. And I think, I'm so happy to see Mr. Ashish here with us, because I think this is where graphics and technology and what people are able to do with both augmented reality, etc., is going to come in handy for us to create the most in real life IRL experience on a URL. So I think after the first month and a half, Professor, I actually told my team that our goal is going to be to make more money in lockdown than we made in real life when we were on ground, and we did.
I really appreciate the spirit and the way you present it. You are turning. I was taught in my school by my social science teacher, who is unfortunately no more alive, school teacher, Keval Ramji. He said, there is every disadvantage can be turned into an advantage, provided
Absolutely.
you know how to do that. You have
Absolutely.
actually told technology brings closer the human experiences, even on the virtual platform, and one can do it. One can change settings, one can create avatars of classmates around you. Augmented reality and virtual reality can create a classroom like scenario even when you are sitting in your home. This is fabulous. This is where it should go. There is a concept of
Absolutely.
virtual lab, virtual studio. In a
Absolutely.
virtual studio, you sit in your home, online, and as if you are in a broadcast studio. You can actually utilize the machines even sitting at home. Almost 80% of the practical can be done. The last 20% has to be done physically, no doubt. So this is
Absolutely.
fabulous, and that you can create events which gives an experience of physical life, touch and feel, and thereby you can charge as well for that. You create a
Absolutely.
unique experience.
Absolutely. People will always pay for value, Professor. The idea
Right,
is, can you create value? Like,
right.
the question that people were asking earlier, saying, I can create content, but how will people come there? So to that, I'll tell you, see, when YouTube started, there are millions of hours of content. So the first thing is content requires curation to give it context. People don't understand that unless you do not give context to create to content, it's nothing. I mean, if I am searching for something online, Google was created for that reason, that I could search things well. But today, human curation is scoring in such a big way. So I think there is a big value that people are willing to pay for contextualizing any form of creativity. Today, all the universities present here will say, I've got great courses. How do I get students? Well, you've got to marry this with online marketing. You've got to
Right.
marry this with, and there are hundreds of ways. Yesterday, I was exploring LMS, a learning management system. Now, the world is changing and going. Education, I think, will move online in a very big way. And a good LMS, not just a good professor, but a good learning management system with a good professor, with a good course structure, can create an absolutely interactive, great experience. Yes, ultimately, I want to have a cup of tea sitting in front with you, seeing you, maybe, getting a back slap, because we are human beings. But till we can't, we've got to make do with this experience. And I really find it, I mean, I don't even know whether I'm going to ever operate physically again. I was telling my wife, let's shift to the Bahamas. I can do workshops online from there and make all my money. What's the point? Because I do it. So I do
Right.
believe it can be done.
Do marry the physical with the digital. Don't desert
Absolutely.
the
No,
physical.
no, absolutely. My,
Uh,
my entire event fraternity is waiting for that, which is why we were approaching the government and we've done all of that. But I mean, that's for
right.
another day.
I like, and I want to repeat your one very critical point that you have said for everyone to take note. Content requires curation by the human being, by the person, to give context. So it's not enough to search online. It's important to curate good content in a context. Today, our context is understanding web media, functioning of entertainment to information and everything on the web. That's our context. And in that context, one gentleman from Europe has just spoken about mobile journalism, and Roshan in his inimical style. And I would like to also note, Roshan, much of what you are saying is new learning that shows that you have been picking up
Absolutely.
ideas even at this senior stage of life, that we all, and that's something that we should learn. The senior we are more, we have to go back to classroom even more, retrain ourselves even more in the new
Completely
normal.
agree.
Thank you.
Completely agree.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
We'll
much.
come back
Thank
to
you.
you, Roshan, in a
Sure,
few
sir.
minutes. Priyanka is there. Priyanka Matanhelia. Priyanka is a scholar of consumer insights, is a scholar of web, particularly Twitter. She has a huge experience on Twitter. She is a scholar of brand communication and brand management with a PhD from US. And she is a very, scholarly lady. We keep meeting on social media. Priyanka, I would like to ask you, how are people communicating on social media about brands, and how are brands changing their behavior based on that communication. User generated content, how much of it is influencing people's brand behavior from people's content. Earlier, brand is to tell what it believes and people is to follow. Now brands are following people's sentiments. Can you give examples and speak on that? Because you are a scholar in that domain. Over to Dr. Priyanka.
Thank you, Professor Ujjwal Chowdhury. It's my pleasure to be here and give my views. As you said, I've been an academician most of my life, so I will provide a perspective based on academics as well as the practical experience that I have gathered through traveling this country for consumer research studies and ethnography and going deep diving into people's lives, as well as watching how the COVID situation has worked out. This lockdown has impacted people's lives and the brands, etc. So to start with, what I want to start with is that web in particular, social media in particular, has created a very, very important feedback loop which was not there earlier in public communication system, which was actually the communicators, the public communicators had to go and seek out that opinion. But today it's readily available, and it is becoming stronger and stronger. The reason is because we are turning into a surveillance society, and this surveillance is from both ends, from the communicators as well as the viewers or the receivers of communication. And how it is translating, if we look at, for example, COVID, what happened? Suddenly there's a lockdown. How do people communicate? So suddenly, we see stories about migrants. Where was it coming from? It was not initially coming from mainstream media. It was people themselves who are caught in the problem situation, people who are seeing the misery, and the people who are responding to that situation are not necessarily establishment people. So everyone came together as society, and that's where we see the example of social ties, how social ties are being strengthened through social media. And it is creating the society is trying to bring an order to this suddenly chaotic sort of situation, even though it seemed like very orderly, but it did bring a certain chaos. And Nike, if we look at the Nike ad that they recently released, we see that they have used this insight to say that we are together. Sports world might be disintegrating. It may look like there is no sports happening, but we will remain together. And they put out this very legacy sort of, ad which married so many people from so many different perspectives together to drive home this message that don't lose hope, we will remain together. So, we see that. Then if I come to surveillance, the Sushant Singh Rajput's case, if you look at that, how that has brought people together. And the reason is because, surveillance, people are looking at minute details. They are not letting go. They feel that this is their chance to actually bring accountability to, society. So, and the reason why this is happening is, one is, of course, surveillance is increasing. Second is the awareness about issues is increasing. And that's where the mainstream media, the role of mainstream media is also very important. If we look at the coverage, of course, there's sensationalization, there's voyeurism in that coverage, but at the same time, there is media advocacy as well as, education about, how to interpret all these different elements that are in the case. And this surveillance, I would also like to give an example of, a brand. If you look at Fair and Lovely,
Right.
what did they do? They changed the name to Glow and Lovely. Why? Because of Black Lives Matter. Now, Fair and Lovely is an Indian brand. It has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter, which started in the West. But why did they change? Because they have understood that they cannot come across as discriminatory. And also they are selling brands and products in the global world, not necessarily just in India. So while they do not want, they understand that the product still remains relevant, the brand name is going to get them into problems. So they have changed that. even though it's a half-hearted attempt, but it is an attempt on the part of the brand to take that opportunity. And another example I would like to give is how brands. So if you look at Mahindra, Mr. Mahindra is very, very active on Twitter, and if you look at his posts, they are all about nationalism, patriotism, and that makes him a very nationalistic sort of businessman who's made in India. All these narratives that are going on, his posts are very, very much tying into that, and that gives the brand a very, very strong identity of being a very Indian brand, which is not only produced in India, but it is actually adding to the pride of India. And if you look at the ads that they are releasing about how Indian Army is using Mahindra vehicles, how police is using Mahindra vehicles, so that is adding to the equity and the credibility that they are building in the market.
Very good. Thank you. Good examples. We'll come back again. I remember Mahindra TUV was there, Vikas Dube's encounter case, and TUV turned upside down, and it was considered to be a weak car. And then Mahindra came out with this huge barrage of campaign where it shows how Army uses the Mahindra cars, Mahindra vehicles, and how strong and sturdy they are. So obviously the digital sentiment of the people is being taken note by every brand while actually planning their campaign. I really appreciate that point. On the Sushant Singh Rajput case, yes, people are interested in the details, but I think there's a voyeurism. People are also interested in personal lives of people. Exactly. It's not a very healthy trend for the society to get into personal email chats or diary writing or things like that, because those are done at a very one-to-one level, and it is not a good thing to bring it in public sphere. However, justice should be done. There's no dispute on the issue of justice. For those who are asking questions, we'll take up questions very much. But just now, we will first listen to other speakers to understand various perspectives before we take up the questions. But keep asking questions. I appreciate. There are more than 200 people here, and I'm told more than 350 people are on Facebook. So at least 550 people are listening live, and that's a good start. Mr. Ashish Kulkarni, almost the guru of animation in this country, graphics, animation, and that domain, AVGC as it's called, animation, video graphics, cartoons, all those things. So visual effects. So this domain, which is a strong part in entertainment, and fortunate to see that Indian animation and graphics is doing pretty well. You're getting awards internationally, and Chota Bheem and many other films have done reasonably well. They're moving into properties, intellectual properties now. So in that context, what do you think is the future of entertainment online, digitally? Not just animation, but OTT and many other forms. So over to you, Mr. Ashish Kulkarni, who is the chairman of the Federation of Indian Chamber FICCI's AVGC Council, who has been the founder of Punya Vision Communications, who has been the former CEO of animation, big animation of the Reliance Group. So over to Mr. Ashish Kulkarni, whom I consider as a father figure in the domain of animation, graphics, and web entertainment. Your comments.
Hi, Ujjwal. Thanks so much. In fact, thanks ABP for doing this complete webinar series. And I know I love working with several studios in Kolkata, and we have been exposed to a lot of talent from that region, and I think this is going to benefit them a lot. Well, Ujjwal, in fact, let me take one thing very clearly. India has 106 years of history of cinema. We are a great storytelling nation. We create cinema in about 14 languages. We create about 1,700 to 1,800 films a year. The challenge is that we are yet to create a global brand from cinema. And I think, the space where we need to really see that from no doubt that every language and every form of cinema or television that we do in India have its own ecosystem and its own economics and sustainability. But creating global brands from India is something which is very, very critical. And I think what really lent, within the media and entertainment to create the global brand was definitely the IFA Awards. The second, I would say that, I'm very proud that just within 20 years of existence of animation and visual effects and gaming in this country, today we have a gaming company which is a sponsor of IPL and a great success story. At the same time, we have an animated series which is for the preschoolers called Little Mighty Beam, which is the topmost watched show amongst the category, and even amongst the top categories all put together within Netflix domain. It comes within the top 5. So the thing is that the success of building global brands have actually come through the web. And I think with the complete processes and the systems that we follow into the creative industry within the country, unleashing them, one through the national education policy, that we should allow kids to take creativity, performing arts, design, sports, and events from the school time to the university to the research is now going to open up. And I think that's going to really see a big spurt. And what we need to really see the web doing is, the content consumption has gone through the roof as the COVID times began. But the content creation took a hit because the live action shoots were not happening. And the visual effects industry of ours got badly affected because the feed comes from the live action shoot. But the gaming industry actually did, phenomenally well. They grew by about, 10 times the total size that they had within the last 4 months within India. And, most of the OTTs and rest of the web related content platforms grew by about 600 to 700%. And I think that's a big responsibility on the content creators, because the web allows you a little better pricing because your reach is global and the pricing is little better, so they can actually do well with your quality of productions. At the same time, what used to be a very territorial distribution, restriction for the content that is created in India has now found a way to, reach global audience. And you would be surprised at how much Indian content is today liked in Latin America or some of the African countries, and of course the East side, the South Korea, and how South Korea is also partnering with India. So I think it's a very important said. If you would have waited for people to, do it on their own, this would not have happened. But COVID actually pushed people to rethink and restart and look at resetting their objectives. And I think that's where the web has become extremely important. And I see it will be a coexisting platform, but web is delivering much better results in terms of profitability as well as in terms of, reach of the content. And that's where the content creators would love to stick to the web.
Thank you, Mr. Kulkarni. I would take your argument a little further. First of all, I appreciate the point that global brands are on the rise through the web, through the use of the web, global entertainment brands from Indian soil. Second, you said very well that subscriptions of the OTT have gone up. Let me tell, Netflix has gone 652% higher subscription in the last 5 months. Miss Ayushi, who is the director of communication of Netflix India, was supposed to speak in this platform, and she could not actually finalize the time. Too much of action is going on there. So much of action is going on. And even for that matter, a small time OTT platform called Ullu.com, Ullu app, has started making huge profit in this pandemic situation. It deals with a little bit of adult content, but it was dealing with adult content even before COVID. It's only now they've started making profit. Content creation change, yes, that's a good point. Content consumption has increased, but content creation is not catching up in that manner, at least at live action content, because of the limitations on shooting. In Bombay, I'm sure Mr. Kulkarni knows it and would maybe speak about it later. Only 20 or 22 people are allowed to shoot at the same time to maintain physical distancing. That's I mean, that's nothing for the usual film shoots in India.
Ujjwal, just one
yeah,
quick point here.
yeah.
The thing is that when the limited people are going to shoot, the load on the post-production, when you mentioned post-production earlier, I was waiting for making that point, because the load on visual effects post November, December is going to be very high, because
Okay.
people will be shooting on a green screen, and we will have to create all the backgrounds and everything on the visual effects and the animation platform. And I think that's how the films will be completed, and that's where there's a huge opportunity
Right.
for the visual effects and animation to integrate with the live action further.
That's a very good point, how post-production will gain in importance. And you've also rightly said about the rising gaming industry. Gaming industry, particularly Hyderabad-based gaming industry, has been making huge forays, new projects there. And you rightly talked about pricing and reach benefits of web products. Now let me give an example. CPH Docs is the biggest documentary festival of the world. It happened online this year for the first time in its history. It has registered 32% more audience, because audience could come in from all over the world without moving out of their homes, because it was online. And audience was asked to pay $5 through paywall to pay. It has registered 18% more gross revenue. And real value is even more, because real profit, because the costs have gone down. Cost of organizing it online has gone down, whereas the income has gone up 18%. So it's a fabulous concept. By the way, even this time, Cannes Festival has happened online, as we know. Fiki Frames, you are one of the key persons in Fiki Frames. It has happened online. I must tell everyone, thanks to Ashish ji, Fiki team of Lina ji and others, there is a Fiki Frames Leap that's happening on 26th and 27th of, right? 26th and 27th of...
27th and 28th. In fact, Roshan is also there on the panel.
Right.
You are also there. Yeah.
I am also speaking. 27 and 28. I would ask everyone to participate in that Fiki Frames Leap. Go to Fiki website and you'll get to the process to register for that. The point I was telling also is that Oscar is happening online this time, and large number of the top line events happening online with an experience as if you can get that is you are there in the program itself. It is happening online, but amplified through the digital and the electronic media. Even Bundesliga, for example, the football league of Germany recently happened on ground without any audience and with certain protection of the players, certain protection measures. And it was amplified heavily through online and on electronic media. So yes, we'll get back to you, sir, with a little more discussion on web entertainment products of the future. How can youngsters train themselves up for the web entertainment market? Let me go to the next person now on our panel. The next panelist, Miss Sonia Kulkarni. Sonia, as has been already introduced, is a four-ranking name in public relations, image management, and reputation management. Large part of reputation management and image management had been through newspaper coverages, through physical presence of the client or the brand leader in certain programs. Now these have gone for a change completely. She has worked with Ad Factors, India's leading PR agency. She has worked with Sampark Kecham at leadership positions. Today she runs her own company. I'd like to know from her, how is she managing web reputation, image management, web PR in these times of pandemic, where physical interaction is at the minimum. Over to Ms. Sonia Kulkarni.
Thank you so much, Professor Ujjwal. It's an honor to be here, and I must say that the panelists are really esteemed and adding a lot of color and flavor to this discussion. They're bringing a lot of perspectives, so it's great to hear all of them. I'm sure the audiences are benefiting immensely. I think it's a very, very critical and important topic, very timely. Of course, we've been all discussing this. PR has, gone through lots of its own trials and tribulations in the last 25 years that I have seen it. And I still feel it's evolving in India. It's still at the top of the iceberg because it's also grossly misunderstood. But this is the time. Like Roshan talked about adversity, and I always believe that every crisis is an opportunity for us to not only reiterate who we are, stay relevant and quickly adapt. And I think this whole 5 months, 6 months has shown us that there's so much is happening there, and marketers have to scale up to get that momentum going. So mature companies who understand this, realize that PR is good in any time, while some are trying to get to this space. Digital was happening last almost 5, 6, 10 years. Last 5 years, it is more rampant. But the 6 months or last 5 months has made it extremely critical. So we work with a lot of online brands who have, become 100 crore plus brand in the last couple of years. For purely digital, they're in the personal care. They service more than 18,000 pin codes all over India, millennial, unisex. They understand that today the consumer who normally has a very promiscuous relationship with brands, it's important to create that influence with them, but at what and what touch points and when, that is important to know. Because today the consumer in its decision making journey goes through a lot of stages. Consumer himself or herself is also the media today, is also the influencer, is also not only consuming the content, but is also producing in many ways. And it's also being influenced through various channels. So I think for PR, it's very, very interesting times. It's only going to get better because, I always say there are no rights and wrongs. Yes, the traditional media, which has been there, and even the traditional media is adapting now. We've seen what's happening with a lot of big, media houses with print editions. They're all turning to digital. It's important for marketers, retailers, manufacturers to understand this, because content is also getting repurposed. Like Roshan apparently said about, staying relevant, about being there in Google. Yes, about being Google, because Google needs to find you relevant. Those metrics are important. So, like I think Priyanka mentioned about Mahindra. Mahindra just launched their new Thar, completely online. They've got the key influencers there. Today, there's been this rise of whole social media influencers. How are we targeting them? In this consumer decision journey that the consumer goes through of, evaluating, considering the brand, the whole buying decision, eventually buying it and enjoying the brand and also becoming the advocate. So how do you bond with? How do you create that bond, right? So that is also critical for, and for PR agencies like us, we are orchestrating this entire space. Amplification is also going on in lots of different platforms. And how do you strategize that? Because one fit doesn't work for all. You're strategizing today for WhatsApp content, you're strategizing today for social media, but again, it's different for Insta, it's different for Twitter, it's different for LinkedIn. How do you stay relevant there? How do you create the right kind of, noise, in this whole clutter? So I think it's very interesting to be there in this space, and we are definitely enjoying. And also with the Prime Minister's vision, trying to promote a lot of local businesses being, being vocal for local. For them, it's more cost effective in the web space. You need to then understand what the end objective is at every stage of their life cycle and create and amplify those strategies on content. So I think for us, it's a big game changer.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that the way you're saying that people's buying habits are changing, buying decisions are going online, and therefore the way to communicate with them is not the traditional way. For example, outdoor has got a huge, downsizing. People are not moving out because of physical distancing unless it's there compulsory, it's essential. So outdoor industry has got a blow. But on the other hand, taking or talking about brands online has gone up immensely. People are not talking about ads. They're talking about acts, ACTS, acts. Yeah. So an act of compassion, right. Act of communication of compassion. For example, saluting the Corona warriors, Corona heroes. So, for example, talking about immunity and how immunity. I have found a spices brand called Sunrise Masale, which has actually taken awareness on immunity as their messaging platform. So they are creating, this awareness, and at the end of the entire thing, which is a 1 minute or maybe more than a minute campaign, they talk that we also produce these spices. Sunrise Masala produces. So their own brand comes in last 10 seconds, and it talks about that whole compassionate communication centering around immunity. You wanted to say something, Sonia?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And what we've noticed is it's not that, marketers weren't listening earlier, but they're listening more intensely now, listening more closely. There is, of course, an empathy. They brought them closer. to all their stakeholder, so hence they're deeply engaging far more, because today we work with a real estate brand, and they're doing very well all along, but they took the opportunity to create a lot of messaging for all the stakeholders, employees, vendors, customers, of course. And like Roshan was talking about, they used to do a lot of offline, on ground events, which they immediately moved on to, online, because they realized when you're working from home, it's very challenging, and their whole theme of the project has been child-centric homes. So they started creating a lot of content, bringing the families together. So, this also gives opportunities to, people like us to work very closely with our clients, and, staying ahead of the game, staying ahead of the curve.
Right.
So that's another very important.
Important, right. There's a question, how to reach the farmers or the rural customers? What kind of media can be used for that? This is from Mr. Gautam Bhadra, who is a senior marketing professional who works with agricultural products. So do you have any ideas on that? And later on, maybe I can ask Priyanka ma'am also to speak on this. Yes, on the rural markets, how to reach out there.
Yeah, so, in fact, we do work with agri-tech clients, and also with India Pulses and Grains Association. So earlier, of course, it was regional media, but you would be surprised to know that the boom of social media has exponentially also impacted the tier 2 and the tier 3 cities. So, because there is very aspirational there, right? Even earlier when I said, when my client was serving 18,000 pin codes, and most of them are from 2 and 3, that's where the content is being used. It could be in different languages, of course. Of course, radio has played a very important role, but we are also using the social media very, very effectively to reach out to them, talk about innovations, talk about a lot of public interest, awareness, messaging for them. And they absorb it. I mean, the kind of consumption they have of this kind of content is amazing. And it really is very helpful. We've seen the results.
Sushrita Palit is asking a question, Sonia.
Yeah.
Like digital media has taken over traditional PR procedures, do you think AI, artificial intelligence, is going to be a problem for freshers who want to pursue a career in PR?
See, honestly, technology is impacting all of us. AI is definitely going to play a big role, but the ecosystem of PR, or corporate communication, or whatever we call it, it still has a lot of human interaction. There is a lot of human interface understanding, so as Roshan also said, going back to Roshan because he was mirroring my thoughts earlier, is virtual does create a human experience. So even if you see a lot of content coming out, which has kept us going, whether it has been a lot of our platforms like Fit2Copy or Girly Uppa and, stuff like that. But yes, there will be certain process-oriented jobs which are more routine mandated, which might be taken over by AI, but a lot of personal to personal interaction, a lot of strategies would still be driven by, PR professionals like us who have the aptitude, who are positive and proactive in their, thought processes.
Great. I must add to this, large number of press conferences are now happening in the last 2 months over digital media.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we at the university, Adams University, we released a 24 pages document on how the university has responded to COVID crisis. What would be our steps and measures till December 2020? And this was done through a e-PR conference, e-press conference, which was attended by 83 journalists from East and Northeast India. And this is a new trend. We're also finding that focus on digital reputation and understanding digital engagement or social media engagement of brands is being considered as a criterion to understand the strength of the brand. It wasn't so much earlier. Yes, people tracked what is the essence of the share of voice or share of noise, whatever you call, in the social media by a brand. But today, tracking it has become very, very critical part of brand building. Yes, I would also appreciate the point that focusing on brand promise and the stakeholders is more important than aggressive marketing in such troubled times, in pandemic times, in crisis times. That's a very good point that we have already mentioned. And yes, you want to say
the customer to remember that brand for a long time.
Right.
You can differentiate. I mean, to give a very small example, as a customer myself, I deal with 2 banks, and I had one bank who was literally hand-holding me through this time. They called me prior and said, okay, there is this whole moratorium happening for AMI. Do you want to go for it? They again called me and said, okay, it's going to get over now. Well, as the other bank has treated it very coldly. So, obviously my preference also shifts. So it's also the treatment, right? I mean, it's not just about doing it because it is necessary to do it, but how you're doing is making that impact. And it's all about impactful communication at the end of the day.
Great. Thank you. I also appreciate, Roshan, you are answering to the questions of the audience, even from the side. I just would like to take this question on the Gaon connection or the rural marketing, which earlier Sonia also addressed. This has been answered by others, and I'm reading that out because it's an important point. Roshan Abbas says, there are so many methods to reach the rural. Gaon connection, WhatsApp messaging, radio, gram level initiatives, man and van works still with the digital. So this is his perspective. And
Gaon connection, actually, I mentioned because Nilesh Mishra, who was a storyteller on radio,
right.
Nilesh got very sick of Bollywood and everything because he was a lyric writer and everything, and he went back to Lucknow. And he went and he set up this rural newspaper called Gaon Connection, which is both physical and digital. He has built such a strong brand that now a lot of the work that we do for Unilever and other brands, we often speak to people like these because, see, because you don't know it doesn't exist. This is my big problem is that I find people coming and saying, how do we connect? I keep saying, have you even gone and looked for it? Yeah. Because the problem, and this is a generational issue, I'm sorry to say, but I realized that we used to search and search and search till we found the answer. Today, most of the answers are online, but you don't know how to look. I have a huge problem with people not knowing how to look online. You don't know how to do, tag searching. You don't know how to do affinity searching. Right. And these might sound like big words, but they're not. Again, I'm telling you, all this can be learned. What the professor said, see, Sonia is saying something, I'm making my notes. Professor is constantly making his notes because we are sponges who like to absorb.
Right.
Prasoon Joshi gave me one of the best things, Ujjwal sir, I'll tell you. He said कि जब हमारे पास 90 मिनट का कैसेट होता था ना तो हम गाने उसमें कौन से डालें की बड़ी वैल्यू डालते थे. Today when we have an unlimited playlist, हम उसमें कुछ भी डाल देते हैं because हमें डर ही नहीं होता है. It can be 2 hours, it can be 6 hours. We do not. The human mind also, while it seems to be, it's endless, it has a retention capacity. So थोड़ा बहुत delete करोगे तभी कुछ add करोगे, तो you got to do both. But I feel that we become copious consumers, and social media actually works like dopamine, right? Every time somebody, it is so Tanmay Bhatt, who's one of the most smart creators, was part of AIB, now does gaming. He just plays a video game and talks while the game is on. That he's got 2 million followers when he had 0. So after AIB's debacle, he's now got 2 million followers because he has contextualized the content.
Very nice.
So I'm just saying it's very important. आप ढूंढोगे, चिराग लेकर ढूंढो, भगवान मिल जाता है. Problem नहीं है.
So content is king, but context is the kingmaker.
Yeah,
indeed.
Absolutely.
Contextualizing content is very important. We will come back to you again. There are many questions you are also answering, but I have also questions for you. We'll come back. But let's go to the last speaker, but never the least. And she has been waiting for 1 hour and 12 minutes patiently to have her say the first say. Dr. Jaseena Backer. Dr. Jaseena Backer is a well-known writer based out of Kerala, is a parenting trainer, behavioral trainer, psychologist, and an author. So we will have her to speak how it is all about web writing. She started writing first on social media, which became a phenomenon in that circle, in her circle, and then went on to coming out with book and coming out with book reading sessions, ebooks, and now there is a published book, a couple of published books also. I think one more project is on. So over to Dr. Jaseena Backer about writing on the web, being an author digitally. Dr. Jaseena Backer from Kerala.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here, and what an interesting panel we have going on here. With web writing, I think this is the best time for writers. I'm not discounting the writers of the print media or the writers who were there before, but this is the best time because there is a lot of visibility for us writers. I actually began my writing career with writing for the Hindu. So you write something, you might get a feedback, you might not get a feedback, and the feedback, maybe you don't read it. But on the web, you write something and the feedback is immediate, which means there's a very close connection between the reader and the writer. There is hardly any distance. You write something and you get your feedback immediately, which actually really sharpens your writing skill. It makes you very conscious of what you're writing. Of course, creativity, there's liberty in creativity, but then you know what the audience also wants. So it keeps you in that creative boundary. At sometimes you can also cross that boundary, but then you know where you are headed. I have used the web to create my audience. Before I started writing my book, I started blogging and I created my audience. It's very, very essential that in this web world today that you create your audience before you start writing your book, because you just can't come one fine day and announce yourself, hey, I've arrived. I'm this writer, I'm this author, I've authored this book, buy my book. So over the period of time, if you are intending to write a book, you need to create your audience. And the best way to do it is on the web, because it's free out there. You can voice your opinion and you need to be very focused. You need to know what's the genre you're addressing. Being a psychologist, I write on human relationships, sustainable relationship. So I started picking instances from my counseling life and started writing about those crucial points that mattered to people. Okay, exactly what Roshan was going on saying, give a context to your content. I had a content, I had my audience, I knew this is what they wanted. So I created an audience who were looking for this kind of content to improve their relationship, to improve their emotions. So that entire audience was created. It's only after I had a good number of followers, I announced my book, though I was in the writing process. Now with the web media, there is a lot of visibility also. Otherwise, it's just on the print, you have the byline. So something written by Dr. Jaseena Backer. But now there is a face behind my words. People, when they read my words, probably they know who's writing this. And then they start reaching out for our other write-ups. One of the write-ups that I wrote 3-4 years back, it had a punchline. It had this quotation called, "Women are not rehabilitation center for badly raised men." It became very, very viral. It became so viral that after 2 years, that quotation went to Julia Roberts. It was actually my quotation. After 2 years, it was written as quoted by Julia Roberts. But
once again, Dr. Backer, once again,
yes.
state the sentence. It's very interesting. Tell that.
Women are not rehabilitation center for badly raised men.
Right.
Okay. The article on Facebook I just wrote, it was a story picked up from my domestic help. She was telling me how her daughter-in-law should have, actually corrected her son who has a drinking problem. So from that little story, it was an anecdote from my life, and I wrote that, and this was a quotation there. And that particular story was shared more than 2 lakhs times on Facebook. It was so good that later somebody discovered maybe Julia Roberts said this, not Jaseena Backer. So the web media is a place where we can remain very focused. I've been very focused to women-related problem and parenting problem. I do have my opinion on politics and religion, but I restrict myself because I know I just want to serve this audience so that these audience in turn become my readers. So it's like an entire 360-degree work there. I have my counseling from where I take instances and I write and I give it to the audience. This audience read the write-ups of mine. A lot of them get inspired by it. And in turn, a good portion of them turn into my clients through counseling. So it's like, you're working in a circle. You are developing your circle. The circle just keeps becoming bigger when you have bigger topics and you write a little wider. At the same time, we also incorporate politics, which matters to women. And like in the beginning, before the introduction, we were talking about the sari. I also run my own sari group where I have selected 13,000 women. We speak about the sari, but more importantly, we speak about what matters to the women who drape them. And this is all done through the writing on the web. This is all done through the Facebook group. And a lot of write-ups happen there. And then again, not just for counseling, I'm also called for content writing from these write-ups. So there is a free marketing going on out there. You create an audience for your book that you're writing. You create your clients for counseling, and all this happens on the web. And it's free for you to do. You're not hiring anybody to market you. And then you're also known face, because on platforms like Instagram, Facebook and all, you actually show your picture and you write about things and your face is there. It's not just like having a name, but the name also has a face behind it.
Thank you. There is one question for you. It's put up by Mr. Vikas P. Uttank from Delhi. He's a very well-known writer and a good writer in Hindi. He's asking, all we know inspiring quotes have important impact. I want to ask a question. Why people post inspiring quotes on social media? Does it help them get engaged readers? Can you focus on these companies' strategies? Even companies do it in terms of content and business in this COVID epidemic. Whether it's an individual or an organization, using inspiring quote is common. What's the psychographics behind it?
It's because, recently, a lot of people don't like to read a lot, okay? They'd rather, their attention span is less. So an inspiration quote or a motivation quote has a lot of it filled into those two lines. Now, the quote I just said it says a lot. You don't have to read the entire story to know what exactly it would be. So this is a punchline. It has a retention. At the same time, is as good as you've read an entire write-up. So these inspiration quotes are easy for people to quote at times when they want to inspire others and they want people to listen to them also.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. We'll come back to you, ma'am. Please be around. We'll go back to Roshan. Roshan, you have been answering several questions, and thank you for that.
Not at all, sir.
If you could also throw some light apart, radio and television, that's another area that you have been quite active. Radio and television has seen an upswing this time, as far as consumption is concerned, but not great content is coming out. There is a confusion about the content and its future. Do you think we are moving towards non-fiction content? Do you think we are moving towards more engaged content in the radio, but by engaging the audience? Or, for example, are we moving towards episodic content, where one episode is equal to one story, not a serialized one? So what do you think would be the next few trends, and how can radio and web progress better with the use of the web? How can web be a partner in the growth of radio and television? Roshan.
So I think, Professor, that most radio stations are putting up brave fronts about saying that they are doing really well. I don't think so. I think that it's a big lie, and it's being propagated because everyone wants to come together and say, no, we are doing so well. FCT's, Nisha Narayanan said on a panel I was day before that FCT's sale is down over 50% and much more than 50% actually. So the new radio is podcasting. Now, when I say podcasting is new, the point is that in China, user-generated audio content has become perhaps one of the largest new medias. In India, there are enough apps. There are apps like Khabri. There are apps like Nojoto. Multiple apps that you possibly haven't even heard of, but they are slowly growing. And they are going to be creating the next wave of creators from Bharat and not India.
Very nice.
The big problem that we have is that we have always felt, language used to almost become a skill of communication. Angrezi aati hai Hindustan mein to aage badhoge. Ya achhi Hindi aati to aage badhoge. Now both are alike. Because if you want to communicate with the people of India, you can do it in one of many, many languages. So what I am finding as a big trend is that local language creators are being appreciated. No longer are we hiding behind the fact that we know good English. That's one big change. So I think podcasting is the future. It's going to take a couple of years, but believe you me, it is $1 billion plus industry abroad. Currently, the streams are small, but in India, this is good. You should be teaching podcasting, not radio. Because radio, I'm telling you, will ultimately die. Only state radio might remain. If you look at America, the radio is supported by, it is now public radio, but it runs purely on donations. So they have to stay relevant. Here, unfortunately, old traditional GEC, I mean television, while Star TV and everyone else, they've got one audience, which is the audience that still wants to watch content at home that is either highly relatable, because if you look at the themes that work on OTT platforms to me are also platforms where, why do you go? You don't want to see the familiar. You want to see the unfamiliar. You want to see international content because context unfamiliar है, लोग unfamiliar हैं, उनकी setting unfamiliar है. India में आप क्या देखना चाहते हैं? You want to see things that appear unfamiliar. Oh my God, really? There is something like Patal Lok that happens in the heart of television. Oh, this is what happens in Sacred Games. It is voyeuristic to a large degree, and that is definitely there. Information seeking, see, unfortunately, news is slowly becoming an echo chamber of a very few opinions that people want to keep saying again and again. The minute we talked about the SS, the Sushant case, suddenly the chat became all about Sushant for a second, because this is a means of distraction. We distract people by going to topics that they love to. There's a oh my God moment in it. So I really feel that slowly people will start looking for relevance. The other thing that people need to understand why audio will succeed is that we are going to get screen fatigue. We are spending more time in front of screens than we ever did. If we spend more than 10 hours in front of a screen, your eyes will start telling you shut off. And when you do that, you will look for audio, or you will go back to saying, familiarity. I had a very interesting chat with the Spotify head yesterday on programming, and she said, listen, the two things that happened was, for 2 months, we had two kinds of playlists. We used to have playlists about working out, and we used to have playlists about traveling. Both stopped seeing consumption because people were neither being able to go to a gym, nor were they being able to go, and travel. So both the playlists stopped. But what suddenly picked up was cooking playlists, because people now wanted to listen to familiar music while they were cooking. So again, you will have to just find these new mediums. And for people who are here, I think there's some students and there are a lot of teachers. For the students, guys, the old, 30 years ago when I got into radio, everyone used to say, ye kya hota hai? I mean, FM, nobody knew what FM was. Nobody knew what entertainment television was. My parents thought I'm diving into a deep well, but they were okay with it because they thought I'll find a way. But you have to do that. Stop going to the familiar. Look at what, Mr. Ashish was talking about. Animation is going to be huge. All of these things are going to be huge. Some mediums will port. I mean, what Dr. Backer said, it's so true that, you find a digital audience, you create it, you test it. There's a lovely YouTube creator. I'm sorry, I'm digressing, but it's for a reason. Is that Prajakta Kohli is a girl. Prajakta is a young girl who used to work in, if I'm not mistaken, Filter Copy at one point. And she used to create content, but her content was so engaging that today that girl is a medium by herself. So in the future, you'll need platforms, but you will be the medium. You can become a big medium by yourself, but you need to strategically think it through. Don't just go and, you've just got to put a little bit of some kind of an exercise of learning, putting it out there, testing it, which is critical.
Thank you. I really wanted this discussion on podcast. This is a very good addition. Anything on radio television would you like to have? What would
television,
be the future?
you know what I'm seeing with television? I have lots of friends in television channel, many of them trained by you. So, so they all keep coming and saying that television says, they change their strategy every week. Wo Thursday ko all television producers become bipolar, because suddenly TRP release hoti hai, suddenly everything becomes good or bad.
Bipolar is a good one.
But they do, sir, because what happens is they are so TRP driven. But globally, television is still stuck in that. But look at what's happening with television. Slowly, there are some things again, which is that some of our Indian television is again very easy to consume. It's stuff that you can watch with your family, right? The mobile screen is a personal screen. You will sometimes see things that you don't want anyone else seeing that you are seeing. But the television screen is still a family screen. तो वहां पर family based content ही देखा जाएगा to a large degree. आप नागिन को नाचते देखेंगे, आप अभी भी वो सब चीज़ वो तो देखेंगे आप. because it feeds into two cultural phenomena. It feeds into myth, and it feeds into the traditional things that we believed. घर में एक अच्छी माँ होगी जो सबके लिए sacrifice करेगी, खाना नहीं खाएगी. वो traditional themes चलती जाती हैं, and I find them. I'm sorry, but I find them very regressive at times. But ठीक है, that's also in India, and if that's what they want to watch, so be it.
So I know Doordarshan, in spite of 100% coverage of the country, has become largely small town and rural medium.
Correct.
And you want to mean that the private channels would also gradually become a rural or small town?
They are doing that, sir. They are doing that because they are very clear. Please look at the trends. There are only three things that people watch. They watch that 9 p.m. band of entertainment.
Right.
They watch news and they watch cricket. That's it. That's all they're doing.
There is this gentleman called Soumitra Roy who is asking, how can a commoner like me, who is immensely passionate about cricket, participate in a podcast? How to become a podcaster?
So I do lots of workshops on podcasting because I work with Spotify on it. I in fact put it earlier as a private message to one of the people. There is an app called Anchor, Anchor. It's free. It has in one app, which you can operate from the web, from your iPad or your mobile phone. I don't think they have an Android version, but you can do it on the web. If not that, there are other apps like Zencaster, etc. Kuch nahi chahiye. Soumitra ji, all you need to do is open the app. You just have to slide 3 times on it. You will see record, you will see background scores, you will say publish, and your podcast is ready. But again, podcasting is a marathon. It is not a 500-meter or a 100-meter race. Podcast जब पहली बार आप करेंगे, 200 लोग सुनेंगे, you will say, oh my God, I put in so much effort. But if you move on, the next time you'll add 200, slowly this curve happens over a period of time. So you've got to stay the course. Again, I go back to the same thing because everything is so easily available. हम बहुत जल्दी हम मीडिया से रूठ जाते हैं. अरे मैंने 6 बार कर लिया, नहीं हुआ. No. Stick with it over a period of time, and you will see gold. The tipping point is reached over a period of time. So go and do it today. Just download Anchor. You will really, really enjoy it.
Yes, continuity and consistency are very significant to make a success.
100%, sir.
And also learning along the way and developing each podcast from the other one, the earlier one. Correct. Stage more, better content, better background score, clearer, good technology used. So those things are also important as you go ahead. Can I come to Dr. Priyanka? Dr. Priyanka, there was this question on inspirational quotes, because I find these inspirational memes, videos, quotes being used a lot. What is the mindset? What is the consumer behavior for utilizing and sharing such quotes or such memes or such creatives? Dr. Priyanka.
So, as we know, India's population consists of, largely young children, young, adults. Who are actually looking for social mobility in their lives, right? And social mobility requires that, you find a way to go beyond what your reality is. And that is what motivational quotes do, the inspirational talks. So you will see in India, this trend is much, much higher than in other Western countries where jobs are easily available, where the competition is not as cutthroat that it is in India. And in Western countries, typically students or young people are not really going from their own reality to another reality altogether. Whereas in India, you see a boy from rural India suddenly moves to urban India and his reality is changed. And there are no anchors there to actually help him navigate that social, system. So motivational quotes or inspirational stories help them anchor as well as, provide, help them in that journey towards social mobility.
Great. That's a good explanation indeed. People would like to know and learn digital communication, digital marketing, digital branding. What's the right way? Apart from the formal degrees, yes, we have also BBA in digital marketing and MBA in digital marketing and big analytics, big data. There is a focused MBA on that at Adamas University. We also have that in our management school and digital communication course in our media school. But apart from these formal degrees, how does someone prepare oneself for a career in digital branding, marketing, and communication?
So, you know, there are many different components that go into making someone, you know, helping someone become a digital brand expert or digital communicator, etc. Because, you know, people think, oh, I need to just learn how the web works and that's it. No, you need to understand the subject matter also. You need to be able to understand, if you want to talk about politics, you need to have a depth knowledge of politics as well, so that, you know, you can actually give a very original, very unique perspective on that particular aspect of the subject that you're talking about. So a lot of time people want to talk about their own lives and their struggles, but that, as you know, we've been discussing in this panel, that context is very important. So how do you frame that? So you don't so you need to learn how the web works. You need to learn how to, you know, do research, what are the technical aspects involved in doing research, but you also need to learn how to analyze issues, how to, you know, take them forward, how to form an opinion, how to frame them, so that, you know, you can put it in the larger context, so that it has meaning, relevance for people who are reading it. And that's how you engage the audience. You cannot just put out whatever you feel like in a very casual manner. That will not connect with people. So it's a myth that you just need to learn the technicalities, you just need to learn the technical aspects, or, you know, the process of doing, but you also need to learn the softer and the harder aspects of the subject matter that you want to actually talk about.
Very important point, not just operationally digital medium, but empathetically digital medium.
Yes.
How do you communicate passion, empathy, and inspiration? How do you really, because brands are all about certain motivation, certain values. How do you really communicate them? Yes, technicality is important, operations important. Also, certain technological knowledge is how do you understand the power of a website? What is, for example, Alexa ranking? There are many other types of ranking. How do you understand the focus of conversation? Which are the big terms that are coming out through conversation? So yes, thank you for that point. Maybe we'll take further on that a little later. Dr. Jaseena Backer, if I can come to you, there are two questions for you. I'm reading out both. You can take one by one. Mr. Jaydeep Das is asking, how can I gather notable number of audience even before starting to create my content? Two, Suchishmita Ghosh is asking, how can we send our write-ups to newspapers so that they actually read it and review it at least? So there's one from the traditional print media perspective, one from the digital web media perspective. Over to Dr. Jaseena Backer. Dr. Jaseena Backer?
Yeah. I'll take the first question. Very interesting. How do you create your audience before you start writing? You create your audience before you start writing is you go into meaningful write-ups of others, and you can start giving your opinion below that on the comment, but not for purely debating purpose, but for giving your valuable and relevant opinion on that subject. Your idea is not to create a debate and draw attention, but your idea is to give relevant and meaningful, maybe a suggestion, maybe an opinion, or maybe something from your own experience. So you can be present in a very vast a large amount of other people's write-up, which is actually viral. That's how I started. I started reading the viral articles and reflecting on them, and then giving them very valuable opinion from my own side. And then you will see that each of your comment will receive a lot of likes and comments beneath that. So from there, you develop an audience where your opinion matters and what you say is read and heard. Now, for coming to the second question, how do you actually give your write-up for the editors to view and reflect? I have been very lucky because my first write-up itself was accepted by the editor and it was published. I think again, the content matters and the context matters, and the audience. What are you writing on? Does your write-up have something unique? The topic may not be unique, it may be generic, but does your opinion or what you are talking about, is it unique? Is it important for the audience to read about it? and only that will catch the attention of the editor. Importantly, like we say, no, the subject matter itself has to draw attention. If it is an email, or if you're writing a letter, I don't think you write letters anymore, but if it's an email, the subject matter itself should be very loud and calling out for attention to read. And then, of course, the first introduction of yours also should be important, so that the editor reads why you've written that write-up and why it is important to be published and for the audience to read, and what difference is going to make to them after reading it. Because if it's been a topic that's been widely written about, for example, if a movie release, all of us write review, okay, all of us write review, but what is read is what is from a very different perspective, not from what is being written on the newspaper. I'm talking about when we write a review on Facebook or some medium like that, a social media we write. It should be very different from what the newspaper is talking about. Maybe you can bring out your own perspective. Like, for instance, when I write a review, it'll have a lot of human element in it. It'll have a lot of, thought process of each person in it. Each protagonist or the villain or the comedian will have a very empathetic approach. Why the dialogue must have been said, what was relevant, what could have been better. So something very different from what everyone else is talking. Then your write-up is read.
Very practical suggestions. Thank you for that. Well, I'll get back to you again towards the end. I would love to listen to a small story written by you, and whether it's published or not published is not important. Small story, because the time will be limited. So later on towards the end. Can I come to Mr. Ashish Kulkarni now? Mr. Kulkarni, you have already spoken about the rise of the web content, particularly Netflix and animated content and all. Can I ask you one question that everyone is thinking about? Are we seeing the gradual decline and finally a complete transformation of Bollywood as we know it? Are we going for a situation where mainstream Bollywood cinema blockbusters will be much rarer and far in between, and cinema will have a new market on OTT, and theater halls will be on decline, just as they've happened with AMC and Cineworld in the Western world? Over to Mr. Ashish Kulkarni, Bollywood, OTT, and the future.
Just to tell you, in 2012, we had, close to 17,000 cinema halls, and now we have 9,600. That decline has not come because of these conditions that we are talking about. It has come because of an absence of a good policy in India. The cinematography law has to be changed since 1965. It's been lying in the parliament. In fact, we need a very strong change there. And the Indians by nature needs to get entertained. So whether if they have an opportunity to go and socialize with their friends in the theaters or with the families, they will do that. If they don't have that opportunity, they will do somewhere, consume content somewhere else or get entertained somewhere else. So the challenge is that how strong is our industry distribution pattern that needs to be revamped. In fact, good that we have Roshan Abbas here, and the way he has not talked about how big the events industry is, but it will surprise many of you. It's bigger than the film industry, and it's bigger, maybe a bigger industry than the television industry in India. But the challenge is that they are being able to push agenda for making ecosystem for single window clearance for events, build infrastructure, and make sure if infrastructure and the COVID times, they quickly shifted events to the digital, and they are building infrastructure, which is digital infrastructure. And I won't be surprised that, you have huge digital complexes where you can go and do your events and weddings and a lot of other things. And that's going to happen. So I think it's a proactiveness, which is very important. But I think in India, cinema was, first classified along with cigars and liquor as a sinful industry. And I think that nomenclature has to change. And if, that's the soft power. And I think that's where, as an industry, we have failed because we would have definitely have a lot more screens, a lot more socializing, and a much better environment. But if you say if Bollywood is going to die, no, it's not going to die. It's the format or a platform might change, and people don't mistake. Animation is not a platform. Animation is a form of storytelling. So whether it's OTT or television or a film or anything that you want to do as shorts or documentary or ad film, it's going to be used. Whether you are able to tell that story, as a commentator or as a stand-up comedian or as an animated film or a live action film. The thing is, the industry foundation is so strong. The only aspect that is going to change, as I think, is that it has clearly given a bigger opportunity for all the struggling filmmakers, that you have one more platform that you need to grab upon. And I think you need to adapt to the new situation where everything is going to coexist. And many people are discounting television completely. Many people in the metros say television is dead. Let me tell you, if you look at the actual figures, television is still penetrating in the Indian markets. There is still good 25% Indian, market which is not touched by television, and the television consumption is still there. So you cannot just completely discount the number of OTT are minuscule at this point in time. So everything is going to coexist because Indian habits die hard. In fact, India love to have a coexisting platforms. They want the best of this and best of this. So I think it's a pattern that you need to really follow. What's going to really shake for people is the mobile consumption. I think that's what we have not talked about. The web on mobile combination is the biggest combination and the biggest winner. And I think that's the game changer in this country. And that's going to remain a game changer because the mobile consumption patterns is something that we need to look for. The cost of content or cost of consumption per capita is the lowest. We need to improve on the infrastructure of our bandwidth. Right. And you see how this country reacts to in the next 5 years with a mobile as a surprise. Because if 85 to 95% will be on mobile, there will be only 5% on the television or the OTT at this point in time. And the OTT consumption on mobile, is also increasing very fast. So many of these companies have to change their policy because in India, the mobile consumption is different. They have a different packaging for mobile and different packaging if you're watching it on television. Right. And I think even if you look at an example of the example of Hotstar, and you'll just look at numbers of what's the consumption on mobile and what's the consumption on television, many of your questions will be answered. So I believe for the next 3 to 5 years, the coexistence is the way to go. The creators have to be smart enough to position themselves and position their content because they have a very clear opportunity to reach global and make their impact.
Yes, and global opportunity only would come through the digital means in the best way. MN Chaitanya, Professor Chaitanya from Annapurna Film School, Hyderabad is asking a question from Hyderabad. What is the scope and potential of transmedia storytelling and other immersive storytelling formats in new media platforms with special reference to Hindi and regional language markets?
So I will touch upon the immersive storytelling. The extended VR is the name of the game. Extended VR would definitely comprise of AR, VR, as well as MR, which is a mixed reality. The thing is that the complete consumption patterns with the headgear and all, has a time limit because you cannot concentrate well after 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and that's the limitation. But that technology is fast emerging, and a large amount of consumption patterns you will see would move to 360 shoots, would move to AR or VR or a mixed or extended reality as the time goes, because as more and more experimentation on the web consumption continues to happen, people will have to find the ways and means of socializing as well. So my whole theory is that if Baijus and the rest of the guys are going to teach maths, history, geography, civics, the emotional intelligence is going to be the key factor which parents and teachers will have to deal with. And I think then you need to have schools where teachers have to take the kids to, learn socializing, teach them how to make friends, how to look after the pets, how to actually walk on the street, how to go to the jungle, how to touch a tree, how to touch an animal. So I think the way we actually are growing at this point in time, we need to very clearly define and see that the content creators have to actually adapt to the new changes, because the old methods of content creation are not going to be liked by the new age millennial kids. When you actually prepare kids in the university, you need to see that you have to prepare them for the next 15, 20 years, because that's the vision you can see. And if you look at who are going to be their consumers, and their consumers are all at the age of 5 to 15 at this point in time. So what these kids are going to do when these guys are going to tackle with them on content. So I think the study has to go more deeper, and we don't have enough research, Professor, in this field, in media and entertainment and the content overall, and even design in our country. I think there is a good opportunity that we have research, so that we can actually have a great finding in analytics of how to predict market and how to really see the things happen.
And like in the West,
but for the immersive content, we need a separate session because that's too big a topic, and we have very interesting things there.
I understand that, and we have already been talking for 1 hour and 45 minutes by now. I didn't even realize till someone reminded how many minutes more, that such a time has already gone. In fact, it was so engaging. Roshan, before you leave, I know you have another session immediately hereafter. Print and out-of-home medium have the ability to create huge brand impact, as we have seen earlier. How can digital replace this media on the point of impact? How do you see digital making a bigger impact going ahead than OH or print? This is being asked by a marketeer.
Yeah, so see, you must understand that print and outdoor was not the point of impact. It was fulfilling outdoor was out of home media. Print was possibly the first media you used to see in the morning. So I think print's relevance was two things. One was the permanence of the message, that the message used to remain in print. I mean, why do large, people who advertise homes, why were they doing front page spreads on newspapers all the time? Because you could see that building. You could imagine the size and scale. You could actually flip and see this is what will be on the inside. But now the entire movement has moved online, where the point of impact now is entirely digital, because you must understand it's frictionless. I have seen in the first 1 month of the pandemic an auction happening where a person is walking around a house telling you this is the house with a camera, and then there's an auction online and people bought the house there and then. There was no physical viewing of the house. There was no ad, nothing. Imagine with what Mr. Kulkarni was saying, if you start doing VR goggles, which I sent to Professor Chowdhury's house and say, here are 5 houses, please walk around them, decide which one you want. So you have to understand this will happen when cost of technology also needs to come down. Right now, a big limitation is the cost of the technology. So some things will remain in these mediums also because of their cost. Out of home has a very strange relationship. I must tell you that when the Fire Festival happened, where everything happened online and then it was a huge failure in real life, a psychological impact happened in people where they said things that are advertised only on digital may not be real. And so when we do festivals, we load 20 to 30 hoardings just to tell people ho raha hai. Because people don't believe it otherwise. Netflix advertises, and I've heard this from Netflix advertises on hoardings, or Amazon, because what Mr. Kulkarni said, they need people to believe it's as big as Bollywood. You must come and see it. Otherwise, there is no need. You've seen the ad for Gunjan Saxena 10 times on your phone. But when you see Gunjan Saxena in that big thing with a helicopter, aapko lagta hai ye Bollywood style film hai. So a lot of this is psychological.
And that psychology will change. Exactly. With the changing of habits, that psychology will change. Quick point I would like to, very good point you have made. In fact, I know you have to go. I'd like to, because you also lead EMA and Ashish ji is also associated with many industry bodies.
Right.
It's important that you guys also realize that you can tap into the intellect of Indian educational institutions to understand and do market survey rather than getting it done through your paid service. By the way, the universities will do it almost free or at a low cost and at the standards and conditions that you put in. The reason why I'm saying this, I find there are 3 surveys on the same issue by 3 different organizations telling 3 different conclusions.
Correct.
The reason is each is financed by a certain lobby.
Correct.
And many a time the survey reports are according to the interest of that lobby.
Absolutely.
Whereas universities, because they have to exist beyond money, and their money is, the real revenue is not from those who sponsor the surveys, but really it is from the learners, from the students. So therefore, the universities can actually, and they have a credibility of their knowledge also, their credibility, academic credibility at stake. They would really do a survey which the market actually tells. So whether it's for events industry or for animation industry or for entertainment industry, we need to do more intellectual content about consumer behavior, about shifting trends, about paradigm shifts, about the needs of the consumer, the aspirations of the different groups, millennial group particularly. We need to do this. I think India has not explored that quite a bit, the Indian academics.
Completely agree. You, Professor, have always been, I remember that you were the first person who started Footprints and took it across so many cities where you created a connect between students and corporate, because that is what is needed.
Yeah.
I think education has to become more practical rather than theoretical. And I think you were one of the first proponents of it. So I think any of these, and I'm so looking forward to interacting with Professor Kulkarni again at LEAP. But for everyone else, my apologies. I actually have another session. So I told UKC I have to run.
But it was a fabulous content.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Fabulous content from you.
Priyanka, thank you, Sonia. And thank you, Dr. Kulkarni. Thank you.
Yes,
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. We come to Ms. Sonia, Ms. Kulkarni. So, you have been advising business leaders first on their regular traditional reputation management, reputation image management. Now you are asking them to evolve as also online, on their online reputation, digital reputation. What do you really suggest a person or an organization? Let me take a free advice from you on here. How do I build my brand digitally? I mean, I'm quite active in social media, not as much as Priyanka is on Twitter or Jaseena is on Facebook, but still I'm reasonably active. So how do I build my brand on the social media, and by effect, how does any startup or any organization do it? Sonia.
I think what is critical, and we've all been saying is to be meaningful and to stay relevant, and of course to adapt. So while earlier on, I would always have these questions or concerns from some of my clients, and who would say, the companies at the forefront of brand building and not the personality. And I would always argue it out and say there's always a very good rub-off. And increasingly, if you are, including you, Ujjwal, because it's all about thought leadership, right? So if from a thought leadership perspective, you are seen as a visionary educator, expert in your field, which is obviously detached from being a pro VC of Adamus University or XYZ hats that you've worn. And hence it is important to build your social media presence, build your voice. Likewise with some of other clients, we've done beautiful work. And some of these have been reluctant even earlier to profile themselves in the traditional media because they felt, the spotlight shouldn't be on us, we are private. But now they realize that they carry that torch, they're the torch bearers. So we have created wonderful strategies. Like for one of my real estate clients, we started this program because he's an expert, he knows the industry well, he's upfront to take a stand, for the consumer against the government, things like that. We actually started an Insta live for him once in every 15 days, called as, ask me anything on real estate. This personality who is, the third generation entrepreneur who's built in a business wouldn't have done this earlier. But today, you know, the impact of social media is so high that you can't ignore it. You know, even if you look at the social media influencers, there was this big hue and cry about X number of followers. Now, increasingly, brands have also started realizing it's not just about the X number of followers, but the meaningful content that is going on and the impact eventually you're creating and what's the conversion. With him, we also created another property on LinkedIn called as the real estate of real estate. You know, so here we're actually building this persona, which is part of the industry, but very much detached from his own company brand. Because at the end of the day, for earned media, there are limitations. You know, if you're not a particular profile, if you're not of that size or stature or listed, you know, a lot of traditional media may not want to profile you. But if you create, you know, a story around who the personality is and how impactful, you know, the writing is. So, you know, we started writing a lot of guest columns for him online again. And today, his authored articles are being picked up by all the mainlines and financials also, you know, not only just the print, but also the online edition. So yes, it is extremely important to build that brand. You have to see contextual, you have to see what is the kind of content you're driving. Like, I think Priyanka talked about Mr. Anand Mahendra, and we know that he drives his own Twitter handle. And, you know, you're talking macro, you're talking industry, you're talking nationalism, you're talking brand, you're talking an idea. There is a lot of humane emotions when he talks about his own grandchild, because that's the kind of personality he has created, where anybody and everybody feels free to connect with him. So you first decide what is your objective as, from a positioning point of view, what is the kind of messaging you want to, you know, share. Then you look at the social media platforms that you want to, not necessarily you have to be in all four. Like in this particular client's case, you're only looking at Twitter and LinkedIn and Insta. You're not doing Facebook for him. So likewise, you know, and also it's not in your face. It's very, very strategic and sustained. So likewise, I would be more than happy to have this discussion with you personally offline. But there's a lot more you can do because you have a great appeal with the students. You know, like today I can see people are just lapping up this content, and you have data points, you have research, you have 25, 30 years of experience. You've created events, you know, you've brought the industry, academia, students together. You talked about research. You know, you can be a torchbearer with all of us. Of course, we can support you dynamically.
Thank you.
And, you know, take this, you know,
are you talking, the case study that you gave was of Nalin Gera?
No, then I talked about Rohit Gera. Yeah.
Rohit Gera. I mean, the Gera family.
Yes.
The Gera family. Yes,
Absolutely.
yes. Yeah, I have been reading once in a while, and thank you for that case study. And I take your point. We'll discuss further on how to build the brand digitally.
Education is at that inflection point, you know, because so much is happening on the digital education for the education sector with the new education policy there. You know, the faculty is coping up, the vice chancellors are coping up, the founders, the promoters who are funding these universities are, you know, obviously trying to adapt, and the students. And when we're talking about the digital remote learning, there's a lot more that can be done. So personal branding, I think, is going to go a long way. And we've seen it worked very well, whether it is Barack Obama or Michelle Obama currently, and of course Joe Biden's too in the current elections. But yes, for sure.
Joe Biden is having a rub-off of the Obama brand as well, in fact. And he's even expecting the Bernie Sanders brand to also support him in a way. Okay.
How well positioned a Michelle Obama first lady and a Jill Biden second lady has been. Very distinct.
Yes, very distinct.
And what I'm trying to say is that there is a lot of merit in what's happening and can be done increasingly.
I would request Ashish for his closing comments. Where do you see the youth talent going towards the web entertainment domain? What suggestions do you have at this point of time, which is the starting of a journey of a large number of youth in this country? Delayed new academic session starts. What are your suggestions?
So my suggestion is that there was certain questions on the chat also, you know, regarding the genres and the target audience and all. You know, one has to realize that the storyteller has to concentrate on the story and not on the audience. If you actually miss that, if you start worrying about the audience, then you are not telling a great story. So I think the most important factor for every student is to basically identify what is the story that they want to tell and concentrate on story, work on your story day and night, and don't, you know, ever do a cut paste job. you need to do research, and then evolve a story, because unless and until that story creates a wow factor, it's not going to be watched by people. As many of our speakers have said, it has to make an impact. So I think most important factor is, you need to concentrate on your storytelling skills, and whether it's on the OTT or on television or in the film, that's not going to matter, because as you start putting it on the platforms, the audience are going to tell you this is good or bad. So I think they need to concentrate, and every single storyteller will have to realize that although technology is going to be an enabler, but focusing on technology is going to missing is equivalent to missing the bus. So as their foundation years, they need to concentrate on their basic skills, the observation skills. They need to practice their basic skills of hand-mind connect, because by learning Photoshop, you cannot become a painter.
Very
If
nice.
you are
Very
a
well
great
said.
painter, only then you can use Photoshop more effectively. And I think in all the kids who are coming into our space, they are coming with a list of softwares that they want to learn. And they say, I am a Maya guy or a Max guy. But I'm not looking at a Maya guy or a Max guy. I'm looking at an animator. So if you can do acting, you can become an animator. So I can teach you tools in 3 months' time, and that's not going to take time. So I
Very
think
well said.
concentrate on your basic skills and foundation. Rest will happen for you as you move forward, because you are born in India. You are a very smart brain. You will adapt to technology anytime.
So focus on the art and not the tools of the art. The tools can be picked up as you go along, and tools will keep changing.
I'm not talking about tools. The tools have to be practiced.
Right.
Keep on practice, and don't concentrate too much on technology to start with.
Technology. Okay, great. Great. Focus on the art, focus on the basic skills. Storytelling, as you say. Priyanka, your similar suggestions for the young generation who are starting on a journey of consumer insights, consumer behavior, advertising, brand communication in that area. Yeah, unmute yourself and speak. Unmute yourself and speak. Yes.
Yeah, my suggestion is, because I've had a very unconventional career.
Right.
That way, I started with making television programs for tribals, and then I taught, and then I did a PhD, then I again taught, and then I'm in consumer research. So I mean, working in the tribal region is something like very, very different in any ways, and that's where I started. And then I ended up in US. So it's been like quite a breadth of experience with different cultures and different communities and different kind of skill, knowledge requirements. So my suggestion is, because today the world is very, very dynamic. The career space is not stable anymore, and the tools to build that career, like as Ashish was saying, that if you have to keep upgrading your skills technically. You cannot rely on the same technical skills you learned in school or college. But what you, and as Sonia also pointed out, that it's the thought, it's how you develop your thought, and where your thought goes, what interests you, what you are passionate about, and then the tools emerge, then the audience emerges, and that's when the story of your life starts beginning. So I think, instead of focusing too much on shortcuts or tools or technical abilities, that will only help you in the short term. But if you are looking for a long term career, and to be able to adapt to changes that are happening in the career space as well as in life, because life transitions today are also very, very drastic in the social space. They are not like earlier, like our parents have stayed in the same space, same town, same cities forever. So you need to find a way to anchor yourself in your profession, and that can only happen if you are interested in that profession or the kind of thing. So I have I studied child psychology, and that has been a thread running through all my career degrees, or the work that I do in consumer research, or my PhD. I took human development classes. So that has helped me in even understanding media, or a larger social psychology space. So what I'm saying is that you need to find what you are interested in learning about the human experience. Once you have that, because all career is based on human experience and how to evolve human experience.
Great.
So
Thank you.
that is where you need to concentrate.
Focus on human experience. That's a very important point. And life-changing experiences are too fast today with the change of situation, with the change of economy, with the change of society, and also technology. Yesterday, I met a gentleman who is doing a PhD on digital sociology, how the social relations are digitally impacted differently than in real life. For example, he was saying the likelihood of a man or a woman considering the caste in marriage will be far more if the introduction was physically done than digitally, because in digital interaction the focus would be on, are we speaking, looking at the same things, similar things, are we on the same line of thinking. So that there the question of caste or community or language is lesser than what it would have been otherwise in real life. Now one example, and he was having so many other examples. Thank you, Priyanka, for that insight. And we will in another meet again and discuss further. But I will take the last take from Dr. Jaseena Backer. And this time I'll request you, if you can read out a short story, because that's where a writer's passion and writer's real outcome one can feel. A writer's heart one can peep into through a writer or through a story. Over to you, Dr. Jaseena Backer.
So are you all ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is a story from my published short story collection. It's called Tales That Entail. The collection is called Tales That Entails. And the name of the story is Paid in Full. Let me just... A garland around my neck and a flower bouquet in my hands marked the beginning of my retired life. As I cleared my desk at work, I found the bucket list that I had created over the years for my post-retirement days. Read books, resume painting, join French classes, play with the grandchildren. So read the list. I carried all my belongings along with the bucket list home. Post-retirement, my life moved from the fast lane to the slow coach. I had no more financial commitments to fulfill in life. According to my wife Uma's plan, our son Sanal was to take care of the expenses at home until my pension came through. I'm not rich, so my children were raised with strict financial restrictions. When Sanal started drawing a salary, I wanted him to enjoy some financial freedom before he bound himself to financial servitude. Uma believed that children should learn to shoulder responsibilities early on in life. Therefore, we settled on for a small contribution on Sanal's part, which was invariably borrowed back by him at the end of the month and was never returned. As the days went by, I noticed that being retired meant jobless and useless to Sanal. I sensed a shift in the authority at home. I had prepared for the managerial retirement from work, but I had not prepared for the leadership retirement at home. Our home had only one bathroom, and Sanal had to have the preference. Sanal decided the menu, and he had clout over the remote control. He kept a keen eye on the grocery list, the electricity consumption, and fuel expenses. He viewed me as a handicap depending on him and also stopped communicating with me. Why was there a financial control and breakdown of relationship as soon as Sanal took over intrigued me. A monetary restraint was comprehensible, but only one income at home, but starting a Cold War was incomprehensible. When Sanal decided to reduce the milk by half and discontinue the local newspapers at home, I decided to have a heart-to-heart talk with him, but he was hardly available. A carrot halwa prepared for my friends caused a verbal war at home. While we were growing up, we were financially dependent on you. You yelled at us for letting the taps run long, punished us when the fans were not switched off, and we were served special dishes only on Sunday afternoon. Now that it's me who's paying the bills at home,
Why is it so difficult for you to understand the same situation in reverse? Questioned Sanal as I sat in utter shock in response. I sat numb, weakened by those sharp words. I'm marrying a colleague of mine. We are contributing equally to buy an apartment for us before the marriage. Now, with having to contribute towards household expenses, I am unable to pay the committed amount. It had destroyed all my meticulous financial plans. He gave me a shock when he came back from office. We sold our spacious house and moved into a small apartment in order to settle our children in life. Now, when our son has invested in a house, we were not aware of it. He had a meticulous financial plan as well as a committed marital plan, and his parents were not part of either. I don't expect Sanal to fund our retirement, so what was troubling him about the finances at home, I couldn't comprehend. Sanal told me, Amma has always insisted that she has constantly sacrificed and compromised in life for her children so that in her old age, they would return the care. And I'm doing it, but please don't expect more than I can. No amount of love or care given could have washed away the impending fear of having to take care of aged parents. I can't blame Uma for expecting love in return because of all her life, she had only given without receiving. I took back the financial responsibility of the house with the first pension having been credited. This time I did it differently, exactly the way Uma wanted it to be. I told Sanal to pay his share of running the house and he could decide what that could be. To my utter surprise, Sanal paid for his accommodation, his share of water and electricity and breakfast, all of it very well documented in a spreadsheet. With that, of all of economic was billed at home and communication in the house broke down completely. I have sold this apartment to buy a bigger one. His declaration choked us one night over dinner. We will have to move out elsewhere within a week for a short while until my new place is ready. The words "my new place" set the tone for the ownership of the new home straight away. When I bought this apartment, I had registered it in Sanal's name. Uma had wanted the apartment in our name and officially willing it to his name, but I had brushed it off as a very conservative thinking on her part. Sanal gave us a short notice to bid our final goodbyes to the house that had been our home for over 10 years. Uma fell quiet and busied herself packing up without a word. Even before the week was up, Sanal asked us to get ready to move. Uma reasoned with me, let's just move out. We brought this fate upon ourselves. Our house was packed and stored in the rented warehouse of our old apartment, and that Sunday, while all the neighbors were in their Sunday afternoon siesta, we sneaked out of our home like absconding refugees with minimal baggage. The drive out of town was a long one, but I didn't ask any questions because the answer didn't matter anymore. Finally, the car came to a halt. As Sanal waited for the gate to be opened, I looked up to the writing, Angan, home for the homeless. Layman's language, an old age home. I felt weak all over at the thought of being homeless. This is the best option for both of you, as the new tenant were moving into our old apartment in a week. I will stay at my colleague's home in the meantime. It's only for a month, and I will come back to take you as soon as my new home is ready, he said, dodging any eye contact. He left without a hug, a kiss, or even turning back. I watched as he disappeared into the horizon, the car racing a sandstorm as he drove off. The whirlwind of emotions that he had stirred in me welled up and rose in my heart like a tempest and threatened to engulf the rest of my days. Uma steadied me with her hands on my shoulders and quietly whispered, that was his final goodbye. And she walked away inside Angan. I sat on the steps of Angan until it was dinner time and then stepped into the home of the aged and unwanted. The first night at Angan was the hardest night of my life. I lay awake reminiscing over the memories of Sanal's childhood. The following morning was as despondent as the night. I wanted to move out of Angan the very next day itself. This would be a good experience to be among like-minded people. If we move back into Sanal's world, we would be once again left alone. Let's give this world a chance, Uma told me. I had always given Uma less credit than was due her. So this time, I quietly listened. Angan for the abandoned. All our lives, we had focused on our children and their well-being. Now we are all left childless. I had sketched out my life after retirement 5 years before the actual date, but my son's plan had changed the entire blueprint. I couldn't even have a relook at my bucket list. As I lay on the bed on the second night, my head was as heavy as a rock. In the morning, my hands seemed chained to the bed as though with handcuffs. This is our home. These are our new relatives. Let us accept this new life, Uma told me, disconnecting the call that I had dialed to Sanal. We were all 17 inmates in the home, but Kala and Rajan became our comrades. Kala, whose son and daughter-in-law had left her to move to the US, was in the adjacent room. Rajan, whom neither his son nor daughter had wanted to keep with them because of his various ailments, was in the room opposite. But Angan was more engaging than retirement at home. Morning yoga sessions followed by a common newspaper roundtable was a good start to the day, and all this was washed down with watery tea that was served under the banyan tree. We were missing out on TV in our lives. Therefore, I went back to the warehouse of our old apartment to bring back our old TV that was packed and left there. To my dismay, I discovered that Sanal had taken everything away in the first week of our having vacated the apartment. Uma's words echoed in my ears. It was his final goodbye. 15 other homeless inmates would be waiting for a TV, and I couldn't let them down. So I bought a new one on installments and took it home to Angan. I was told by the manager that Sanal had made an advance payment for 3 months of food and boarding for the two of us at Angan. So it wasn't a 1 month stay as he had told us. Everything so meticulously planned by my son. Not once did he call and check on us. I couldn't accept that my son could be so heartless. Uma henceforth told me not to even call Sanal. After 3 months, I began to pay for our lodging. Uma took charge of the cooking in the kitchen, and Angan in return did not charge us for food. Not once did Uma complain about the shortcomings at Angan. During her free time, Uma watched cookery shows on the TV, and those recipes found their way to the dining table. Her culinary excursions were appreciated by all the inmates. Life at Angan had started filling my days, but nothing filled my heart that was still beating for the children who had abandoned us. 3 years into marriage, when we didn't have a child, we turned to God. We visited temples bare feet, conducting various pujas, climbing numerous temple steps, breaking coconuts, kneeling before gods, observing fasts, and ringing the temple bell continuously. Sanal was born as a blessing following a particularly dangerous visit to Badrinath temple, accompanied by flood and landslides. What an inescapable irony of life, that we spent 2 years of our life praying to be blessed with a child, and now we are spending the twilight of our life being forsaken by him. For Kala's birthday, Uma baked a special chocolate cake. The cake was hugely appreciated. The manager at the Angan asked Uma if she wished to bake cakes and sell them at the neighborhood bakery. I didn't want Uma to tire herself more than she already was, so I asked her to refuse the offer, but Uma accepted immediately. With the help of the manager of Angan, Kala and Rajan, Uma started baking cakes and selling it at the bakery. Soon she started receiving orders for cakes for birthdays and celebration. Uma was a very enterprising lady, and her business picked up very well, while I spent my time complaining about the water shortage, watery dal, dirty washrooms, and slow rotating fans. In order to accommodate her larger baking needs, we moved into a small apartment in a remote location on the outskirts of the city. Uma quietly unpacked and settled into her baking and icing, while I began complaining about the small and dingy rented apartment. One day, out of desperation, I called Sunil, but he didn't pick up my call. He has moved into his new apartment and doesn't want us to be there with him. It's time we accepted that and learned to live without him, said Uma. But I couldn't accept the fact that our son would discard us. I went to his office without Uma's knowledge. Sunil wasn't there, so I met up with his colleague. Sunil is on a project. If you wish to know more, you may speak to his wife. Sunil was married and we didn't even know about it. I wasn't ready to meet my daughter-in-law as a stranger, so I walked away. I felt an uneasiness in my chest. My son had sold our house, thrown us out of our home, relinquished us, himself moved into a new home and got married. We were no longer part of his life, period. On my way back, my thoughts wandered onto my daughter. Samia used to be bitten by the medical college bug, but I didn't have the money to put her through a private college. I was against paying capitation fees and taking students' loan, and therefore asked her to work towards the entrance exam. She didn't pass those and refused to study further. Uma enrolled her in an engineering college, but Samia was not cut for instrument and precisions. It was a sheer waste of money, so we did what any normal middle-class Indian family would do. We got her married at the age of 21. Samia, to date, holds us responsible for her state in life. While I took it with more than a pinch of salt, Uma would repeatedly tell Samia, if you wanted to be a doctor, you should have worked towards it and not show resentment towards your parents. You know very well that we can't afford education in a private medical college for you. We got Samia married to a doctor and she left for France and hardly came back to visit us. She stopped calling us while we were at Angan. My guess was that she feared that we would ask her for asylum. Children who have been abandoned by parents are called orphans. I wondered, what are parents abandoned by their children called? Uma completely immersed herself in her baking and innovations in the bakery. She knew I had gone to meet Sunil that day, and all that she said was, from now on, it's you and me. Stop rethinking our parenting. We have completely failed at that. I was a weaker parent as I kept looking at photos and kept hoping that Samia and Sunil would come alive in our home. Uma, on her part, didn't utter a word of nostalgia, but I knew she was also hurting on the inside. This was evident in the way she kept her head buried in the kitchen. In 1 year after Sunil having abandoned us, Uma emerged a wonderful woman. She hired a help, Indra, to do her marketing. Kala helped with the baking while Rajan did the delivery of the cakes. Uma bought books and experimented with her pastry art. She attended online icing classes and became a pastry chef. Within a year, the orders were far above her delivery capacity. With the money she made, we moved into a bigger space where she had a full-fledged kitchen for baking. She was featured in the local newspapers, conducted baking classes, published recipes, and also had her own baking show on the city local TV channel. She became a celebrity pastry chef overnight. Finally, she opened her own cake shop, and I must concede that I was not at all a support to her. All I did was watch the superwoman being born before my eyes. In the next 3 years, she opened 2 more cake shops and bought an apartment. In all the years that she had spent in the kitchen of our home, I didn't know that a baker and economics genius was buried deep inside of her. Not once did she whine about her life or talk about the children. Circumstances drove her to become an agile businesswoman at the age of 60. During the 3rd year, I set aside my emotions and joined her in the baking business. We then opened our 4th and biggest cake shop. Tragedy hit us with the sudden death of Indira. Indira was the fulcrum on which our cake shops revolved. Uma was shaken but not deterred. She found a replacement and moved on. Indra had left behind an orphaned 6-year-old son. Uma brought the boy home, and I was delighted to have a son in my life. After 6 months, I suggested to Uma that we adopt the child so that he would become a support for us in our old age. Pat came the reply. We will look after him as long as he wants to be looked after. If we adopt him, our love becomes conditional because we are adopting him in the hope of having him support us in our old age. I do not wish to live that cycle of conditional love again. I want to will all our wealth to Angan in order to support abandoned parents like us. A cake shop each for Karan and Rajan. She told me, was it Sanal's abandonment that made her so mentally resilient, or had she always been this strong and I had never noticed it? On our 40th wedding anniversary, I threw a surprise party to thank Uma for the relentless work she did to put our life back on track. That evening, as we were cutting the cake, we had an even bigger surprise as 7 guests gate crashed the party. Sanal, his wife and daughter, along with Samya, her husband, and 2 sons were at the door to congratulate us. Uma invited them into our home and treated them very well. I noticed that Uma had asked no personal questions to anyone, but she did play with her grandchildren. I couldn't stop my tears. I couldn't pretend as if nothing happened, so I greeted them and moved on to my friends. Even after all the guests had left around midnight, our 7 surprise guests stayed on. Uma walked up to them and said, "It's too late, and we wish to sleep now. We are old people and don't have the energy to match you youngsters. I also have an early start to tomorrow as I have a business to run. Thanks a lot for coming and adding joy to our special day." She gifted chocolates to the grandchildren and then turned to Sanal. Handing over an envelope, she said, "Here, I'm returning the 3 months rental for Angan along with its interest till date. Thank you very much for the favor. Now it's paid in full." She then held my hands and walked into our bedroom.
What a fabulous story. What a resurgence of the lady. Fabulous. Fabulous.
Thank you.
Uma character is fabulous. I'm sorry we are totally out of time. Otherwise, we would have had some reactions from our panelists and all that. But there are many people who are giving reactions anyway in the chat box. Thank you very much. It's a strong character that you brought forth. And thank you for that. You caught us gripping completely for the last 30 minutes. And thank you, Ashish and Priyanka, for your insights. I hope we meet again on another occasion. And everyone here,
thank you so
I really appreciate almost 135 people online just now in Zoom, almost 200 people just now in, Avantika is asking Jaseena that whether she can follow you in Facebook. Obviously she can.
Definitely, of course.
So there are more than 200 people on the Facebook even now live. So that's 350 people at this hour, at 2.5 hours later. It's indeed fabulous. I really appreciate. Thank you very much. And we invite me and Ashish, on his behalf also me, inviting everyone at FICCI Frames Leap, L-E-A-P, Leap, which is focused on media and entertainment, education, training, learning, and skilling. And this is on 27 and 28, right? 27 and 28 August. And you can register yourself going to FICCI portal. Ashish would like to say a few things, I think. Would like to tell about the program in a few seconds.
Well, actually, this is in light with National Education Policy 2020 and how media, entertainment, design, events, and sports ecosystem that missed out big time, not having a level playing field with science and commerce. In fact, we are highlighting on that, and we are hoping that this new policy would embrace a large number of these programs and verticals right from the school. And we will be able to have a multidisciplinary kind of combinations and see how the research also pans out in these verticals.
Thank you. Please
and that's the conference.
Yeah. And it's high time that we make media literacy a part of school education, college education, communication studies as a compulsory part of school education, and surely some element of communication training even at college and university level. And new education policy talks about bringing in, breaking the walls between art, science, commerce, very rightly so. Thank you. And we meet again on another occasion. Wonderful. And so many congratulatory messages across on the Zoom and on the Facebook comments. Everyone, please look at the Facebook video. It will be uploaded in a few moments from now. on abpeducation.com, YouTube channel of abpeducation.com. Everyone can get the whole program there, and we need to really listen to it a couple of times more before you understand every point properly, as the panelists have told. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time.